But there's the then the first the first Ku Klux Klan was started during the Civil War on Reconstruction and was started in Pulaski, Tennessee. The second one was phase of the Ku Klux Klan was between the 19 teens and 20s, between 1915 up to 1925, where the where the Ku Klux Klan was, where the KKK was at the highest membership. Then it dwindled during the Depression and World War II. Then resurfaced again during the mid '50s through the '60s with the during the civil rights during the civil rights era, and it still kind of exists today, but it may not exist the same way as it did where people where the where what comes to mind is the hooded there were white supremacist organizations that modeled the Ku Klux Klan and its ideas and its beliefs, but it's not the traditional where it's the hood and the hooded robes and the sheets with the and they burn the crosses, though they could still happen, but it's not the popular, I guess, the more modern day white supremacy. But but those are the phases. But which period I'm discussing is mainly the second phase, the second era of the Ku Klux Klan, which is between World War One, and as I said, this the film birth of, and this mainly due to the popularity of the film Birth of a Nation in the white community, and with this. With the rise of the Second Ku Klux Klan, acts of violence start to take place again throughout the Deep South. And with this leads to a mass migration of blacks from the south to the north, seeking to get away from Jim Crow, Jim Crow poverty and violence that's been oppressed them since the Civil War. But and then they moved to cities in the north, urban north, and out west, well primarily northeast, such as New York, Chicago, Philadelphia, St. Louis, and cities like those types of urban cities, and a lot of them are seeking better job opportunities as well. With the outbreak of World War One, many whites leave many of the industrial jobs that the blacks have, leaving them to take most of their job, leaving them to have the jobs that most white people would have had. At the same time, you had some blacks who also fought and served during the First World War. With this, as many blacks served in the First World War and returned home, many of them thought they should deserve respect and respect and I guess dignity and recognition, even though thinking that this may change in in the laws of segregation, which wasn't really the case. And actually, as these soldiers returned home, many were met with again intimidation and acts of violence, not only just in the South but in urban cities of the North. In the following year, at World War One, in 1919, you had a series of race riots, which was known as the Summer Race Riots. Most notable was in Chicago, Washington D.C., is Omaha, Nebraska, and other areas of the South, as well as you had a rise in lynching as well that went up, mostly again perpetrated by the Ku Klux Klan. It's now here that we start to discuss about Black Wall Street. Now, Tulsa was a city that was established during the oil boom in 1907, and which is in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Which it was also in 1907 that I think Oklahoma gained its statehood. And Oklahoma was originally a place where it was somewhat a safe haven for free blacks that ran away from slave or free blacks as well as for runaway slaves. Yet some territories of Oklahoma, Native Americans actually held some slaves. Though you may be popular popular to me that you may be familiar that many blacks went to the Native Americans for refugees, but yet some Native Americans also participate in the slave trade as well. So that's your I guess that's the start of Tulsa's racial prejudice, I guess there, and then you have the whites that settlers that come in. Of course, they establish mainly the ones that establish the communities, and also they come up with laws of segregation and Jim Crow, as many states in the South did. And then as Tulsa begins to expand, so does or I should say grow. Tulsa city begins to grow. So does Tulsa's black residential area that starts to thrive, where you have a lot of blacks that have jobs as lawyers, doctors, business people, which makes, I guess, Tulsa a very rich and thriving community. It was said that prior to the riot in 1915, Booker T. Washington came to Tulsa and described it as Black Wall Street. As Black Wall as Black Wall Street, and that's why the black residential area was known as Black Wall Street from Booker T. Washington. The town was also known as Greenwood. To the whites, it was known as Little Africa. And of course, many whites were resentful and, or in some cases, were probably jealous of this rich and thriving town. Thriving town is again, it was seemed like they're losing a sense of superiority, as they're fearing that maybe blacks would take over their jobs and become more dominant people of the town, the community. And this I guess creates the recipe and tension and atmosphere of violence and intimidation, creates the atmosphere of tension and violence in the community. And it's also been said prior to the riot that the Birth of a Nation was screened in Tulsa several times, and this was also several times in Tulsa. Also, the Ku Klux Klan become a hotspot in the Oklahoma area, in Tulsa district, and but what would start the riot was that in May around Memorial Day, May around, I think it was on the 29th, 28th or 29th of May 1921 was the start of the riot. It involved a encounter with a shoe sign clerk named Dick Rowland, who would frequently ride the elevator, which was operated by a white 17-year-old girl named Sarah Page. Though it's been speculated that they may have been a relationship, but or not, rather the relationship that has never been proven. but whether they were in a relationship or not, they it was one day that it was that day I think it was one day he went to, I think went to him ride the elevator ride ride the elevator down to, I guess, to the restroom, and somehow the floors were uneven and he tripped onto the elevators and landed on Sarah, fell on Sarah Page, and it's reported that she yelled out rape, and and this and this would start rumors, which was then circulated in the town's papers. It was the title was called Nab Negro for attacking a white girl, and this was the this was the power kit to start the riot, and whites began to start to become angry and the restless, I guess, restless and angry. At the same time, blacks were trying to I guess, protect themselves and trying to protect themselves against the threat of the against the threats from the white community of Tulsa. And they tried to what they did was they tried to with Dick Rome, they took him into the county jail and set him there, and the people and many people in the black community, including I guess the sheriffs, I guess people that were deputized, were ordered to surround the jail to keep Dick Rowland safe. As whites began to descend on the prison, they tried to defend themselves with guns and guns. Many of these people who were World War One veterans themselves, who served in the army, in the navy, in the service, and this also infuriated many of the white residents as well. But the efforts to try to contain the white mob and the crowd was unsuccessful, as whites began to overpower the black people guarding the jail, and white people just started attacking and tearing up and looting the Greenwood area of Tulsa, and Tulsa. And a lot of the whites were ordered. A lot of the whites whites kind of deputized whites on the spot to attack and loot and shoot and kill many of the black residents. It was also been speculated that there was attacks from the air with airplanes that dropped bombs. On the residents in the city, but black residents said they didn't. Have been conflicting stories that many of the black residents, the survivors, did not remember any attacks from the air. And where the case, the town of the black Greenwood area of Tulsa was destroyed and set and burnt to the ground. It's been estimated that thousands of people died in the thousands of people died in the riot, died in the massacre, and were buried in unmarked graves in the Tulsa cemetery. And many homes and businesses and churches were destroyed as well, making some of the survivors who survived the riot destitute and homeless and without any jobs. Many of the surviving people, the riots, who survived the many of the people who survived the riots, some were taken to in like somewhere of a camp or a internment camp until they were released. All blacks were put in these camps. It was kind of like I guess somewhat similar to the Japanese internment camps in the Holocaust and with the Jews, the Jews over in Nazi Germany, Jewish people in Nazi Germany. But many of people survived after once the riot was over. none of the right people were charged for the crime of participating in the riot. Right, many blacks left the Tulsa. Many left Tulsa and went to other places, including Dick Rowland, the one which started the person that interest that started the whole massacre to begin with. Left. It was rumored he had left to Kansas City in some sources. It was never been really known where he went or his last days of life, or last days on Earth. But but Tulsa never really recovered. It did thrive again following this massacre, but it never had the same thriving success prior to the massacre. In the press, it was in the papers at the time. It was known as it was instead of being referred to as technically a massacre, it was referred to a riot, which was as if the blacks themselves were the ones that caused, implying to many whites that the blacks were the ones that started the riot and did it to themselves. Yes, but that wasn't the case. Technically, would be considered a massacre. A riot is normally when two races are clashing, and this wasn't really the case. It was mostly the whites that came in and attacked the black community, which community. Sometimes there's been other names for it, uprising or insurrection, in a way of, I guess, making it seem that blacks were being defiant and were defining white authority and white in the laws, and the rules and norms of white supremacy. Wasn't really the case. And the event was from that point on, for the most part, the event was mostly unknown, unheard of. It wasn't really even taught in many of the public schools in Tulsa. Never in the history books. When I was coming up in school, in elementary school, I wasn't really familiar about the Tulsa Massacre. Through elementary, middle school, I mostly heard about this mainly from documentaries and stuff and sources I read in articles on the internet. It's only in recent years I started people really talk about it on the news, and they was frequently mentioned in the news during in 2021 during the 100th centennial of the massacre. And a similar incident would happen again like this in Rosewood, Florida. Again, a thriving black community, and what started the riot was false accusations of white women being raped that started the massacre. Many people died in the massacre, and many fled and left and never talked about it. It wasn't really frequently mentioned. And of course, you may have seen the movie Rosewood. It was made in 1997. And as I mentioned, the Gap Band was named after the streets of Tulsa. And the song "You Dropped the Bomb on Me" was supposed to be mostly based on the town of Tulsa, where, as I mentioned before, it was said that bombs were dropped on the town. So that's what the song, I think, the message of the song was supposed to be about. Me and the Gap Band toured around different parts of the country, telling people about the riot, and many people didn't believe in it at the time. It's only in recent years that there's been recognition of the Tulsa Massacre, and whites were looked at as being charged with the crime, though nothing really hasn't been a charge of the crime. But as in recent years, been like a little I should say like a plan, or I should say a plan to compensate the black community of Tulsa for people of Tulsa who were affected by the race massacre. As with other races who experienced oppression, black people have rarely been compensated for all the tragedies that occurred. that have occurred. And I guess this was attempted, I guess, to make up for the wrong that was done in history in the past. And that's about sums up the Tulsa Massacre. This is another video by Change Pounds. Stay tuned for my next video.